Good evening, welcome to World News Tonight. I'm Adam Yasser. Russia launched another drone and missile attack on Ukraine in what appears to be a response to the humiliating destruction of Russian strategic aircraft by Kyiv. This comes after President Donald Trump admitted there was no evidence Vladimir Putin was seeking peace. We'll have more on that in just a moment, but first tonight's headlines. Serbian leader Aleksandar Vučić is trying to split the student movement. Polish Baltic Sea port of Gdańsk gets a new terminal to become a leading trade hub. Tesla and SpaceX shares plunge as Elon Musk and Donald Trump trade blows on social media. Russian drones and missiles rained down on Ukraine overnight, leaving 4 dead and around 50 injured across the country. This comes after Russian leader Vladimir Putin vowed revenge for Ukraine's spiderweb operation that knocked out dozens of Russia's strategic bombers. Marek Steele reports.
Lutsk, 90 kilometers from the border with Poland. A barrage of Russian missiles hit several targets across the city.
In Lutsk, in the Volyn region, they destroyed an ordinary hotel where Ukrainian athletes were staying.
And this is Kyiv, the Ukrainian capital, pounded by an even more powerful strike. 4 people dead, many others injured.
Over 400 drones and more than 40 missiles, including ballistic missiles, were used in today's attack. 49 people were wounded.
Russia has increased the intensity of its attacks on Ukraine in recent weeks, raining down hundreds of drones and missiles across the country with one primary goal: to undermine civilian morale. But Thursday night's attack was also retaliatory.
President Putin did say, and very strongly, that he will have to respond to the recent attack on the airfields.
Respond to this Ukrainian drone attack that damaged more than 40 Russian military aircraft, including strategic bombers, one of the most successful operations of the Ukrainian army inside Russia. The Ukrainians were also successful Thursday night. Kyiv struck 2 Russian airfields and fuel reservoirs in one of the first such strikes against energy facilities in Russia since mid-March. Then a month-long pause in the attacks was brokered by the United States.
But sometimes you see 2 young children fighting like crazy. They hate each other and they're fighting in a park. And you try and pull them apart. They don't want to be pulled. Sometimes you're better off letting them fight for a while and then pulling them apart.
The comments made alongside German Chancellor Friedrich Merz contradict with what Donald Trump promised before taking office, that he would end the war in Ukraine within 24 hours. If a peace deal is not reached, Trump has now threatened to sanction Russia and Ukraine as well.
When the president seemed to describe the situation in Ukraine as a game between children that haven't been well educated, and Merz intervened and clearly stated that one has to distinguish between the aggressor, who attacks civilians, and the Ukrainians, the defendants.
In the Oval Office, Friedrich Merz took the opportunity to ask Trump to put more pressure on Russia to bring an end to its 3-year war against Ukraine.
What is certainly in the making, or it has been committed, is a significant aid package to Ukraine from the German side to up to 5 billion euros, which includes also long-range weapons to be produced together with Ukraine.
Western leaders will have another chance to speak about the war and how to support Kyiv at the upcoming NATO summit in The Hague in 2 weeks. Ukraine has been invited to the summit, and the Ukrainian president could be attending. For TVP World, I'm Marek Steele.
Serbian President Aleksandar Vučić is trying to split the student movement that has been protesting against corruption and lack of government accountability for nearly a year. The protests continue as Vučić faces a test of his power in 2 local elections this Sunday. Piotr Miszczuk reports.
Whether it's November, February or June, Serbian students don't seem to grow tired of protesting against the ruling party and pro-Russian President Aleksandar Vučić, who they blame for long-standing negligence and corruption, which, in their opinion, led to the death of 16 people after a railway station canopy collapsed in the city of Novi Sad in November. But now at least 18 students have been arrested, allegedly for attacking pro-government student Miloš Pavlović and his friends, who, quote, just want to study. But it seems it was Pavlović who incited a brawl at a cafe in Belgrade, according to an NGO, Civic Initiatives.
After he provoked some students in that who were in front of that cafe, someone poured water or beer can on him. After that, pro-regime media created a story that he was assaulted, he was attacked.
This, according to experts, fueled the ruling party's narrative that there is a split among the protesters and that not all students want to demonstrate.
There is this other very small group of students and people who are not students who are pretending to be another group of students, but they're actually organized by the state, they're funded by the government, they have widespread media coverage, and they are basically there to project this kind of kind of an image that there are two sides, that there are two groups of students and they're somewhere equal in size.
The arrests come amid two low-key local elections into municipalities Zaječar and Kosjerić, but those are the first since the beginning of the political crisis and the ensuing countrywide protests. However, the pivotal vote might be affected by some significant irregularities observed in the two constituencies.
Where I am witnessing here is not a democratic process. There is a system of organized pressure, intimidation, and fear, and voters are blackmailed. Opposition activists are being attacked. State institutions are being exploited to buy loyalty through job offers, medical benefits, and food packages.
Though neither of the cities is the ruling party's stronghold, it's likely that President Vučić's camp will come out on top.
And also because it is only there in these two municipalities the government can mobilize significant resources to buy votes, to pressure voters, to basically use all these mechanisms of electoral fraud they used in the past, and now to focus all of this on just two localities.
The elections will be held on Sunday, June the 8th. For TVP World, I'm Piotr Miszczuk.
Poland is in a state of cyber war with Russia, a Polish minister said on Friday, after the European Union adopted a plan to deal with emergencies such as attacks on critical infrastructure, internet blackouts and arson. Angela Skujins reports.
European telecom ministers on Friday approved a continent-wide cybersecurity proposal, aiming to stamp out increasingly prevalent and brazen cyber attacks. The blueprint was championed by Poland as it chairs its EU Council presidency, with security central to its mantra. Speaking from Luxembourg, Poland's Digital Affairs Minister Krzysztof Gawkowski said that the policy had broader implications than just the internet.
Poland is just one member state within the European Union. It is an outpost of the free and modern world, bordering on an area where war is waged, bordering a country that is fighting for its survival, Ukraine. However, cyber warfare knows no borders. It is transborder. Cybersecurity affects every country, and the digital tanks can arrive in every European capital.
The EU cyber blueprint highlights the importance of countries' own military capabilities, but it stresses the need to work hand in hand with the NATO military alliance and other member states. This is because if a large-scale incident disrupts a single country's capacity to respond, the chaos could spiral and spill into the bloc. The European Commissioner for Tech Sovereignty, Security and Democracy, Hanna Virkkunen, stated the policy will bolster resilience and help member states learn from incidents they are confronted with.
Now when we have also the cyber blueprint in place, we have a solid shared understanding of our roles and responsibilities, and then we can also boost our resilience together when it comes to this very crucial sector. As we know, cybersecurity is an important part of our overall security of our societies, our industries, our member states, and there we have to work very closely together.
Poland reportedly battled 1,000 daily cyber incidents last year, weakening its critical infrastructure. Many European leaders, such as Polish Prime Minister Donald Tusk, have pointed the finger at Russia and Belarus for foreign meddling. These attacks have also expanded beyond just issues with desktop computers. Cybersecurity-linked incidents have been reported at local shopping malls, such as the Blaze on Marywilska Street in Warsaw and in the Baltic Sea, with undersea telecommunication cables repeatedly cut. Cybersecurity has also been touted to feature in the additional NATO spending defence targets. This will be firmed up at The Hague and is estimated to be a part of an additional 1.5% financial boost. And with attacks like this on the rise, many see this as money well spent. Angela Skujins for TVP World.
Poland's Baltic seaport of Gdańsk, the birthplace of the Solidarity trade union, has just become one of the largest container ports in Europe, thanks to a new state-of-the-art terminal. Our reporter Ovidiusz Nicieja is in Gdańsk and has the details.
With the opening of its third terminal, the container port in Gdańsk has increased its annual capacity by some 50%. It already is the biggest container port in Poland and in the Baltic Sea, and with the opening of a new terminal, it's now one of the largest container ports in all of Europe.
We have cranes that are able to handle the largest vessels in the world. We can go up to 24,000 TEU vessels, which is more than the other two terminals. The cranes are 55 meters high, and it's an incredible improvement for Baltic hub and for the Gdansk as a port.
Polish officials believe that given the global trends and increasing importance of container shipping, the opening of this terminal opens new possibilities for Poland's growth.
The terminal in Gdańsk is increasing its capacity by 1.5 million TEUs annually. This means that it will be able to handle 1.5 million containers a year, that is 20-foot containers. Goods arrive in these containers, which are purchased not only by Poles, but also by our neighbors from the Czech Republic and Slovakia. The expansion of the terminal increases revenues to the state budget. Last year, the value of customs duties, excise duties and VAT charged in Polish ports amounted to more than 13 billion euro, that is by 1 billion more than in 2023.
With the construction of this container port, Poland's land area has increased by 36 hectares, and appetites here are high to translate that growth into the growth of Poland's position in global trade. From Gdańsk for TVP World, Ovidiusz Nicieja.
The European Union ended its preferential treatment for Ukrainian grain and other agricultural exports on Friday, bowing to pressure from the bloc's farmers, complaining about competition for the war-stricken country. Jan Kennedy reports.
Friday, June 6th, marks the first time in approximately 3 years that Ukrainian agricultural products entering the EU will face import tariffs, as the EU's special treatment of them has not been extended.
We all knew this was coming here this summer, and the fact that it's not resolved, of course, reflects the fact that it is quite a thorny, contentious, difficult political issue.
The decision comes on the back of widespread farmer protests across several EU countries, sounding the alarm over cheap Ukrainian foodstuffs flooding the market and undercutting local producers.
Farmers in these countries farm under completely different environmental, social and labor conditions to our farmers. This puts us at a competitive disadvantage. We cannot produce products like theirs at such low price ranges.
The new measures introduced had and still have a huge impact for our agriculture, and there were some protests in Poland, in France, to protect the whole branch of our economy, which is agriculture.
Until a new agreement is reached, reduced annual quotas will be implemented, which permit over 85% less maize, 30% less poultry, and just 1/3 of the previous sugar volumes. But since 5 full months of the year have passed, the EU says the quota will be adjusted accordingly.
As regards tariff rates for specific quotas of specific products, that will be restored during these transitional arrangements, and it's so 7/12 of what would be an annual quota.
Duty-free food exports to the EU have been critical for Ukraine's economy since the outbreak of the full-scale invasion. Ukrainian officials warn that returning to the status quo could cost €3 billion annually in lost revenue. But this worst-case scenario seems unlikely. As Ukraine's Deputy Prime Minister Olha Stefanishina said, she expects a new trade deal to be in place by the end of July.
That means quite a short time, which means the impact would be negligible on the overall economy or on the agricultural sector. But you have to think, if she's coming out and making a statement like that so definitively, she must have quite the confidence to believe that this should get resolved in due course.
Still, the new deal is expected to be less generous than the current terms, as Ukrainian Black Sea exports have now rebounded to near pre-war levels. Future agreements will be based on the deep and comprehensive free trade agreement that was in place prior to 2022. For TVP World, Jan Kennedy.
Many expected a divorce since day one of Donald Trump's presidency. But the scale of public acrimony between the US president and his billionaire backer Elon Musk on Thursday caught both their admirers and detractors by surprise. Natalia Komarov will give you the gory details.
Some say it's better to have loved and lost than never to have loved at all. But what if what you lose is almost $300 million that you invested to get your loved one elected President of the United States?
Look, Elon and I had a great relationship. I don't know if we're well anymore.
Since leaving the Department of Government Efficiency, or DOGE, earlier this week, billionaire Elon Musk has been openly attacking Donald Trump in a long series of posts on his platform X. The bone of contention?
The bill is passed.
Trump's so-called Big Beautiful Bill, recently passed by the US House of Representatives. Musk called the president's flagship project a disgusting abomination that was filled with outrageous pork. President Trump ascribed Musk's dissatisfaction to personal reasons.
But I'm very disappointed because Elon knew the inner workings of this bill better than almost anybody sitting here. Better than you people. He knew everything about it. He had no problem with it. All of a sudden he had a problem, and he only developed the problem when he found out that we're going to have to cut the EV mandate.
The billionaire quickly clapped back.
Such an obvious lie, so sad.
It's complete with a review of steps 5 and 6.
Things escalated further when Trump took to his social media platform Truth Social to announce that he would terminate Musk's government contracts. Now, we all say regrettable things when an argument gets heated, but there are lines you only cross if you're ready to burn bridges.
Time to drop the really big bomb. Donald Trump is in the Epstein files. That is the real reason they have not been made public. Have a nice day, DJT.
Musk is referring to Jeffrey Epstein, the late financier who gained notoriety for sexual abuse and trafficking of underage girls. Rumors of Trump's close friendship with Epstein are rampant online. However, the US president denies taking part in any illegal activities. The very public feud between the world's wealthiest man and the world's most powerful leader garnered a lot of attention. Tesla stocks began plummeting.
President Trump for standing up for America's families.
MAGA supporters took sides. Some right-wing influencers called for Elon Musk to be deported, others for Donald Trump to be impeached. And even Polish Foreign Minister Radosław Sikorski joined in on the action. Quoting an old tweet where Elon Musk called him a small man in a disagreement over the Starlink network, he wrote,
"See, big man, politics is harder than you thought.
You know, we will make mistakes.
Will Trump and Musk patch things up? The two live in a world of very big money and even bigger egos, so anything is possible. But for now, the Wall Street Journal reports that Trump is considering getting rid of his Tesla. For TVP World, Natalia Komarov.
In between trading bobs with Musk on social media, President Trump met the new German Chancellor Friedrich Merz in the White House for talks about the war in Ukraine, the threat of Russia, and US-Europe trade relations. Both leaders did not hold a news conference after the meeting, but back in Germany, Merz said he was certain the United States remains committed to NATO. To discuss the state of the transatlantic relationship and their impact on Ukraine, I'm joined by Roland Freudenstein, co-founder at the Brussels-based Freedom Hub and our regular guest here at TVP World. Roland, welcome. Good to have you with us.
Thanks for hosting.
So I know there is little information about the meeting between President Trump and Mr. Merz, but do you think the German Chancellor got anything substantial from that visit?
This was above all atmospheric. So the mission of Friedrich Merz was, first of all, to establish himself as a major European leader following in the wake of Starmer and Macron, who already had been to the White House. And also, of course, to try his own tricks, I would say, to establish a positive personal relationship with Donald Trump, but I think he has largely succeeded in that.
Tell us, what do you think he did?
Well, first of all, he let Trump do the talking, right? As the Musk-Trump escalation was just beginning on Wednesday, there was a lot to talk about in the public part of the meeting, where American media just asked Trump about domestic issues and more precisely about Musk. So that was one thing. The few times that Merz did take the floor, he was actually judged as pretty smart by the German media that are otherwise rather critical of Friedrich Merz. So, I give you an example. He handed over the birth certificate, or a copy of the birth certificate of Trump's grandfather, who actually emigrated from a German village, Karlstadt, to the United States way, way back. Second, when Merz was politically challenged, for example, when Trump started his comparing Russia and Ukraine to little kids fighting in the park, and you have to sometimes let them fight. Merz quite clearly said that, yes, we all want peace, and we believe that you, Mr. President, can bring it about. That's the flattering part. And then he went on to very clearly say there is no equality between Russia and Ukraine. Russia is the perpetrator, Ukraine is the victim, and we stand by Ukraine. I mean, this was, I would say, exemplary in terms of not being unfriendly to Trump, but definitely bringing in some very, very important policy corrections on Trump's statement.
Right, but on substance, there was a lot of speculation before this visit that Mr. Merz will seek some kind of a grand bargain with Mr. Trump, where Germany will spend more on defense and pay for US weapons and coordinate, let's say, the European response to the threat from Russia. And in return, the US will continue backing Ukraine through intelligence sharing and backing NATO in general. Has there been any evidence that this actually transpired?
Not so far. And frankly speaking, I don't think this was on the cards after just a half-hour press conference and a 1.5-hour lunch that they had together. When it comes to purchasing American weapons to further help Ukraine, I mean, this is an effort that, first of all, encompasses the entire pro-Ukraine coalition that goes even far beyond the European Union. And when anything that it concerns the U.S. Toughening up sanctions against Russia or joining maybe even the Europeans in tougher sanctions on Russia, is Trump's decision alone. And I don't think that he will, at this point in time, sell this as a bargaining chip for something else that the US gets from any European power, be it Germany or someone else.
Right. I'm glad you mentioned this because Mr. Merz met also congressional leaders and it looked as if they were on the same page. But back home, he said, it seems many of them don't realize how fast Russia is rearming and they're basically asleep at the wheel. I find that astonishing.
Yeah, well, you know, Merz is known for some frank language in every sense, sometimes constructive and sometimes a little bit rocky.
So this was constructive or rocky, this particular one?
No, I think it was a good thing to emphasize that we have a conversation in Europe where we assume things are self-understood, and there's a different conversation in Washington, which has a completely different baseline. And I've personally experienced the same in transatlantic think tank debates in the last couple of weeks. So it's absolutely constructive to point out this difference in perception of reality, I would say. But, you know, talking about Congress and more specifically the Senate and this fantastic initiative by Lindsey Graham and Senator Blumenthal from the Democrats to basically enact secondary sanctions like a 500% tariff against third countries that still buy energy, gas or oil from Russia. You know, that would be absolutely fantastic. But I believe that this will pass when I see it passed, because I think the President Trump, reserves a veto on this, and he hasn't taken his decision yet. And, you know, U.S. Congress people can tell the Europeans about their super tough sanctions coming up until they're blue in the face. You know, without Trump, nothing is going to move in Washington.
Right, but that in a sense leaves Ukraine in limbo. And as we have seen from our report earlier, you know, we have these daily attacks from the Russians. Russia is rearming. Yes, the Ukrainians had this spectacular attack. But the situation on the battlefield is fragile, to say the least. So, you know, there seems to be no sense of urgency, either in Europe nor in the United States about it. What is your take on this?
I think the sense of urgency is there, but the obstacles, also on the European side, in trying to make up, at least in a decisive way, for the equipment that the US may not deliver to Ukraine anymore, and also intelligence and so on. I mean, these challenges are staggering, and the Europeans haven't found the magical formula yet. But let me just point out two things where Ukraine is actually getting better. You mentioned the military strikes. We will see more of this in the near future. You know, Ukraine on 1st of June has shown an absolutely groundbreaking example of asymmetrical warfare. And it has re-established its military credentials in a very significant way. This hasn't had any influence on the military action on the ground along the front line yet, but it may in the future. And the second thing, the new, I would say, concept that we're talking about also in the Ukraine Defense Contact Group that met on Wednesday in Brussels at NATO headquarters is we're not talking primarily anymore about delivering Western equipment to Ukraine. We're talking about enabling Ukraine to produce military kit at much lower prices in much greater quantities, either in the country or we help Ukraine by producing it in the West, but these are Ukrainian weapon systems And Ukraine will, to a much larger extent, rely on its own weapons production. That, I think, over time will be a game changer in this conflict.
Roland Freudenstein, thank you very much.
Welcome.
And this concludes this edition of World News Tonight. Please stay on with us for more news analysis.